I don't even know, man. But you know what I do know? Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. But looking young puck diving inside my chest, ladies and gentlemen. My people in the Philippines. I have the Wesley So versus Peter Svidler game from round 8. As you guys know, we do have the champion showdown going on. So, yes, for all my people in the Philippines, I will say magandang umaga, kamusta na aking makaibigan, mabuhay ingat lagi mabuting pagbati. We're gonna go ahead and see who is malakas. Masaya akong makikinig muli. Maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking mga video. And anybody who is coming from Russia, I will say привет to you. Dobre otra. Как дела? And spasibo for coming by and taking a look at my stuff. If you guys are ready to go, let me just push this just a little bit more. So I'm in the camera. If you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. So we got E4, C5. So we have the Sicilian on the board. Nah. Of course, we don't have any openings, but if you guys don't know any better, like I don't know any better, then you guys will think this is a Sicilian defense because look, we got knight to F3, knight to C6, and so we have castles. So it's like, look at the position. This looks almost identical to a Sicilian. I know the pieces are different because it's chess 960, but this looks a lot like a Sicilian, man, to me. I don't know, maybe not to y'all, but we got E5, you know, discouraging D4. So we got C3 because we still want to push D4 as white. Knight G comes to E7. You got B4. I mean, what you're trying to do is deflect this knight away so you can grab this central pawn. Central pawns are usually worth a little bit more than a wing pawn. So D6, pawn takes C5, pawn takes C5. And then we have, bam, queen to A3. Why not? I mean, nothing is defending this pawn at the moment. And, you know, it is also putting it kind of on the diagonal of this king. So why not just make an attack on the pawn? But, you know, B6 just takes care of that, you know, pretty simply. So we got D4 finally. Pawn takes D4, pawn takes D4, pawn takes D4, knight takes D4. And then we have knight takes D4. And then the bishop comes all the way from the corner and takes on D4. So, I mean, you know, white is actually doing pretty good. They just have these couple pieces to get into the game and they're good to go. You know, this pawn is, you know, it has a little bit of care that you have to put into defending it, though. So castles by black. We see bishop to A4, making that rook really, really uncomfortable. So we see knight to C6 blocking, and we do see queen to C3. And there's actually a really nice combination in the position for black. So if you want to pause the video, I'm really curious to see how many people get this because I honestly didn't even see it at all. So if you don't get it, do not feel bad. We are the same. So go ahead and pause the video and see what black should play here. Okay, cool. So what we actually see in the game is a very logical move because you're thinking, man, you know, like my stuff is attacked, right? You're like, man, my position is attacked. You know, I'm looking at, you know, bishop takes G7. And so, you know, so Svidler plays F6. But the computer's like, bro, that is just way too defensive. So, like, first let's look and see. Well, actually, we can't look and see. So, the first thing that we need to do right now is look at the move that you guys could possibly have guessed. And I'm going to be shocked if anybody actually guessed this move. But it is actually B5. And some of you guys might be thinking, wait a minute, dude, hold on. What is B5, man? Like, how is B5 anything? Well, on the surface, it looks kind of crazy. But once you see these next couple moves, it makes super complete sense why B5 is a beautiful sacrifice. Bishop is going to take on B5, and then you have bishop to A5. And you are skewering this queen and this rook. So this is just a beautiful, like a pawn sacrifice. And so, you know, of course you can't, you know, take the knight yet because you're going to be sacrificing your queen. So this forces the queen to move. And after queen to B2, bishop takes E1, rook takes E1. And yes, you have given up a pawn. But, I mean, and then, I mean, black is also going to win a bishop by taking on D4. So, I mean, you know, you've gotten rid of the bishop pair. So, I mean, you know, things are actually looking pretty good for black. So, if we back up after B5, if you were to go bishop to G7, it actually wouldn't be bad. So the bishop would take on g7, and then you would go ahead and take on a4. And you'd actually allow the bishop to take on f8. And the rook takes on f8. And, I mean, you're actually up an entire pawn. You're actually up an entire piece, though. So that's the problem. You do have, you know, quite a bit of pawns. You got the rook pair, but, I mean, it's very, very unclear. It's not looking the best for white. So backing up, like I said, after queen to c3, we did see f6 in the position. And so that's a very logical human move. Like I said, you are trying to defend against the bishop takes g7, but it does win you a piece if you do decide to go b5. But I think, like I said, b5 is an insanely hard move to actually choose. And I mean, to be completely honest, if I was black, I wouldn't have thought about b5. Like, I mean, b5 probably wouldn't have come in my thing because you'd have to calculate bishop to a5. And I mean, I don't even think I'd have even seen that move myself, man. So rook to c1. We are taking advantage of the fact that this queen is undefended at the moment. So that's why it's always super, super important that you develop your pieces. So we got rook takes e4, knight over to d2, rook to g4. You know, we are trying to take advantage of, you know, kind of like, you know, the vulnerable position of the king. You know, of course, we have to be really careful about this diagonal opening up because this is a very nasty check. You're going to be doing, like, let's say, for example, you make a lazy move, right? Let's say you make, like, something like this, right? You know, you're going to be looking at something like that. And then, you know, you can give up the queen, but you're going to be getting, like, all kinds of material. Actually, no, you're going to be getting mated. So. But, I mean, just for example's sake, I mean, if you did go this, the king has to move over here. And then you could just literally go back and forth. And there's something in there, though, that's wrong. I don't know what's wrong. But what's... Oh. Wait. If you go here, yeah, here, then here, then here. Oh. the specific position of the queen is what makes it weird. But anyway, like I said, rook came to g4. We saw f3. And we got rook over to h4. Bishop takes c6. Queen takes c6. Queen takes c6. Bishop takes c6. Rook, bishop down to f2 first. Rook over to a4. And then we have rook takes c6. And as you can see, white has just won, you know, an entire piece in the exchange. They're going to be losing a pawn, but they've won an entire piece. So rook takes a2. We have knight up to e4. And this is actually the position that Peter Svidler does resign the game. And I'll be honest with you. I don't think that the resigning here was legitimate. It is a little bit lost for black. It is like down like almost an entire piece. But you do have these really, really nice looking like connected pass pawns on the queen side. That, I mean, if white doesn't play correctly, I mean, maybe you can kind of get those pawns rolling. The best possible variation in the position is actually 8-6. After knight comes to d6, you got f5. Rook comes to d1. Bishop comes to e7. You see bishop to d4. Rook up to a4. Or bishop to e5. Rook to d8. And then now you have kind of a problem with the pin going on down here. So rook to e1. Bishop takes d6. Bishop takes d6. And, you know, like I said, at some point, maybe you can kind of get these pawns rolling. If you can kind of get them rolling a little bit, I mean, you have a little bit of compensation. Each player had like 7 or 8 minutes. So, I mean, I really kind of think that, like, you know, Peter Svidler could have, you know, he might could have played this on just a little bit longer until it, you know, got to a point where it was just completely lost. Where, you know, you've seen situations where, I mean, you might be 6 or 7 or even 10 points down and the game can just, like, swing. There was a draw that was done. I think, yeah, it was a draw. It was like Vidit Gujarati versus somebody. And it was like, I think it was like a Nxd4 or something. It was like plus 16 or something he had, and he like allowed a draw. So it was like, you never know, especially when you have 7 or 8 minutes left on the clock, man. You got to play that out, bro. So maybe he just didn't feel like it. Maybe he was tired. I don't know. But that is that game. So I appreciate everybody very much. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and cut in under 10 minutes. I will get the good mornings next video, even if it's kind of long, but I like the under 10 minutes look of this video. So that is the end of that game. And Wesley So he's in the pack. I'm not sure exactly where he's sitting, but I appreciate you guys very much. Spasibo for my people in Russia. And Maraming Salamat Aking Makaibigan. Makito Tayo Mamaya. Pa'alam. And I'll see you guys next time.